Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Clinton Luckett. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of American Ballet Theater, and it is my great privilege and honor to welcome you here to this discussion with esteemed dance critic and writer, and now author, Marina Harss, who has just published her very first book, about the one and only, one of our greatest living choreographers today, Alexei Ratmansky, who is the former artist in residence here at American Ballet Theater for the past 14 years, and a man I have got to spend many, many hours with in the studio working, and it's a thrill to have this wonderful book. I'll just hold it up here for a second so we can see it. About Alexei, the boy from KYIV. We'll also be joined today by ABT principal dancer Christine Shevchenko. Christine has appeared in almost all of Alexei's ballets that he's produced here at American Ballet Theater, and in fact, she's rehearsing two of them today, just before and just after this interview, so she will be joining us shortly to just talk about her experience dancing in Alexei's choreography. So first of all, welcome, Marina. Welcome, Alexei.
Thank you, Clinton. It's nice to be here. Hi, Alexei.
Hi, Marina. Hi, Clinton. Hi, everybody. Great to be here with you.
The very first sentence in the book is, Alexei Ratmansky's life has been one of almost constant change and forward motion. And true to that fact, he is right now in Vienna, Austria. He never stays in one place for very long. So Alexei, thank you for staying up late and talking to us from Vienna.
It's not too late. 10 p.m. It's okay.
It's just your dinner time, usually, yeah. Right? Marina, congratulations. This is your first book, so that is obviously a tremendous achievement. And I know in this day and age, it's also not easy to get, I think, a book published about a dance subject.
Yes, that is a triumph to get a book, a dance book out. Yes.
And, you know, with the imprint of FSG, which is a tremendous publishing house. So, first of all, when did you have the idea to write a book? What gave you the spark, having not written any prior to this?
Yeah, well, I'm a journalist and I write a lot about dance for a lot of different publications. So I was closely following Alexei's career from even before the time he arrived in New York. When he first came with the Bolshoi and they performed The Bright Stream, that definitely already lit my curiosity to see more. But the idea of writing a book really formed over time, I think, because he was then in New York and we were seeing ballet after ballet and seeing the development of his style and seeing the connections between his work. And then having the opportunity to interview him for various publications that I was writing for. It just seemed to me like there was this wonderful opportunity to really create a full portrait of a living artist who was right here among us and whose work we could see. And also I was seeing he was making work all over the world. So it was interesting to me to try to bring all of those different works together into one narrative, one larger portrait of the artist.
And just briefly tell us some of the places you went to research this book.
So I was very fortunate in that the idea came to me before the world order was, turned on its head. So I was able to go to Moscow and St. Petersburg, where I saw in Moscow I saw him work with the Bolshoi twice, and I got to go visit the Bolshoi school and to speak with many early collaborators. And then I also went to Kyiv, his native city, and spent an incredible week with his family, and again visiting all the places he had worked in and played in as a boy. I even got to see his first home in Kyiv, which was it kind of opened this window into the past. But I also went to see him work in Zurich and Berlin, and I saw ballets in Miami and New York, all over the place. So there was a lot of traveling and watching and talking involved.
So all told, how much time did it take to write? How many years?
Everybody asked me that question. 5 years sounds like a long time, but I was also working on other things. So, but yeah, it took me 5 years, and really all the work I'd done before then, watching his ballets and interviewing him for different publications, obviously that went into it as well. So I've really been watching his work since 2005.
And the pandemic, in a way, maybe that felt like a gift to you.
No, it did not feel like a gift.
You did something to really do.
Yes, yes, it's true, because one thing it did do is that because I'm always working on the next deadline. And so when you're writing a book, it's a completely different thing. You have to kind of marinate in what you're doing. And you have to be able to think about it and write and continue the next day where you left off. It's a very different kind of mental process. And normally I'm always thinking about my next deadline. And because nothing was happening, I didn't have any deadlines.
Really take the deep.
Yes. So I was able to just sit and write and think, and that. So yes, in that sense, it was helpful.
I mean, most of us just suffered through the pandemic, but I do know.
I suffered too, but
I know some people who, in many ways, it was a great gift to their creative work. So
yeah,
that was wonderful.
I mean, in our very harried life, it was a moment of repose. Yes.
So Alexei, it's been a real pleasure to read so much detail about your life, having known you for so many years and worked alongside you. Of course, one of the things that you are very well known for is your incredibly deep knowledge of dance history. You are the most, I think, well-read person on dance history. You have uncovered practically every stone that can be unturned in dance history. And now you're a part of dance history. There's a book about you. How does it, as someone who is, you know, read like almost every book possible or whatever, how does it feel to have a book written about you? To be
I wish I have a drink, a glass or something, because you know, it's surreal. It's because it took a long time, and my initial reaction was about 5 years ago. So I've been living with the fact that the book is being prepared for a long time, and we've spent a lot of time with Marina talking, discussing, and all kind of things, not only my works or my experiences, but actually life and everything. So it's been great to find. At the beginning, I was a bit hesitant because I liked Marina's critics very much, and I was afraid that you know, if we go in a closer friendship or something, she won't be able to continue reviewing my works, and I didn't want that. But somehow I think it's better if Marina then touches that subject, because she has a secret how to distance herself, I guess, and still try to be objective. Anyway, your question. Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm honored, and I'm humbled. And it exists now. The book is out. So what can I do?
You are a part of history officially.
Okay, let me be part of history. Great.
Reading the book, I think you did read the book yourself, yeah, just to check it or whatnot.
Of course, of
you
course.
are, as the first sentence of the book stated, a man constantly looking to the future, constantly looking to the next project. Like literally, the curtain would come down on one premiere, and the next day you're on a plane to do the next ballet somewhere else. So it must have been very odd in a way to take a moment to really look back over your life and read this kind of summary of it. Did something stand out to you particularly or surprise you, or like you didn't never thought about something until you saw it on the page?
Yes, it surprised me that everything that I was dreaming of as a ballet student actually happened. And I never thought of that because I was very, very ambitious. And when I started to choreograph, there was a long period of time when I was just like knocking at every door and trying things and thinking, will I ever have a chance? And it continued for maybe a decade or something. And then suddenly, I think the turning point was Nina Ananiashvili's, she asked me to choreograph her. And she toured 2 of my pieces. And then from that point, I started to get commissions. And then it never stopped actually until the pandemic. And now it sort of gets back to on this track, which is great, of course.
Right. Well, first of all, just to say about the book, I felt it was very clear in the book that you really trusted Marina. I don't know how I can say that, but it's just something that you felt about reading it, that you did have a deep trust in her, and Marina obviously has a deep admiration and respect for your work. So I felt the mutuality of your collaboration really comes strongly off the page.
I think we had a conversation early on, which I don't know if Alexei remembers, but it was when I was really seriously thinking about doing the book. I had kind of talked to a couple of people to test out whether they thought it was viable, and they did. And so I thought, well, this is maybe really going to happen. And so then I decided I had to have a very frank conversation with Alexei about what it would entail. And I don't know if you remember this, but I said, I'm going to be, if I do this, I'm going to be around, I'll be in rehearsals, and I'll be pestering you for interviews, and you're incredibly busy, and I'll be asking a lot of questions. And so we had a moment to really sort of talk about the reality of the project. And first of all, he said, who would want to read a book about me? And I said, well, don't worry about that. Apparently there are people. And then we really talked about what it would entail. And he thought about it as he does about things. And he said, okay. And I knew when he said, okay, that meant okay. And so that's really how it went.
Marina, you also used a phrase at one point in the book I think to describe his choreography or his choreographic process. You used the phrase tripping off the tongue. And I felt like your words trip off the page as well.
Thank you. That's high praise.
They really just flow off the page. It's a very wonderful read and very engrossing.
Thank you. That's what I hoped for.
It was not effortful at all.
I did sense, from the very, almost from the beginning, I did sense Marina's extraordinary tact and respect and seriousness. So I didn't have to worry about things. And I thought that I can open and completely tell her everything that I have. Christina appeared.
Yes, I saw her briefly.
Again.
Christine is here, so I would just take a quick moment to introduce Christine Shevchenko, principal dancer with American Ballet Theater. And Christine is currently having a very busy rehearsal day today, rehearsing two of Alexei's ballets that she's going to be performing in this season coming up. But she's taken time out of her schedule to be with us today. I think she's just trying to get on. So yes, a lot of the reason we're here today is because American Ballet Theater, here at American Ballet Theater, we are preparing for our upcoming performances at the Koch Theater in Lincoln Center, which opens next week. We have 3 programs that we are presenting over a 2-week period. And 2 of Alexei's works will be represented in these programs. In program number 1, it will feature his Piano Concerto number 1 of Dmitri Shostakovich, which was the 3rd part of the Shostakovich trilogy that he produced in 2013 for ABT. And we will be reviving that next week in our first program, which opens on the 18th. And then in our final program of the season, which opens on October 27th, we will be presenting his first work for American Ballet Theater when he became artist in residence in 2009. It was then titled On the Dnieper, and he's since changed that name to On the Dnipro to reflect its Ukrainian spelling and pronunciation. So this season is the first season that has been totally programmed and curated by our new artistic director, Susan Jaffe, and I was thrilled that she has made a commitment to keep Alexei's works in our repertoire and to celebrate the pieces that he did during his time with us. So Alexei, I would love to just dive in a little bit to, hi, Christine, you're here.
Hi, sorry, the Wi-Fi, but I'm trying to make it work.
How are you doing, Christine? You have a busy day today, so thank you.
Day. See you, Marina.
Good.
I just watched Christine do a run through of the Shostakovich Piano Concerto number 1, which was terrific. And then right after this, you're doing a run through of On the Dnipro. So we're going to let you a little bit early so you can do that. So Alexei, this was the very first ballet that you created when you came to Ballet Theater in the spring of 2009. It was called On the Dnieper then. Music is by Prokofiev, a famous composer for his ballet scores, Romeo and Juliet, which everybody knows, and then also The Prodigal Son. Another one of your many talents is unearthing music by important composers that was written for ballet, which no one ever does. And you found this score of Prokofiev's and you decided to produce it. The first thing I want to ask, though, is about the name change. It was called On the Dnieper then, and now it's On the Dnipro. Could you speak a little bit about the changes that you've asked for this time?
Dnipro is a Ukrainian river, the major river in Ukraine. And since the war started, it's really a turning point in history, in Ukrainian history, in Russian history. It forced many changes, dramatic changes. One of them is to look at Ukrainian and Russian cultural heritage and separate those things. Because for many years, like I remember touring in the late 80s and early 90s from Kyiv with the Kyiv Ballet, we were called Russian dancers. So now Ukraine is clearly a Ukraine. It doesn't want to be part of, part of Russia in culture, in toponymics, in everything. And I thought it's important to change the name. We also changed the names of the spelling of the heroes. Sergei is Serhiy now, and yeah, that's only changed actually, I think. I think Christine was in the group when I choreographed it. No, weren't
Yes.
you?
She was in
2001.
in the ensemble in the original cast. I think it was her second year in the company, Christine.
Yes, it was my second year.
It was your second
Yeah.
year. And Christine herself is also Ukrainian born. She was born and grew up for part of her childhood in Odessa before her family immigrated to the United States. So, Alexei, to your point, when you first arrived in our studios, we knew you as the former director of the Bolshoi Ballet, as someone who was trained in the Bolshoi Ballet School. And I think we all thought of you as Russian and a Russian choreographer. As one reads through the book, one realizes how deeply Ukrainian actually you are and your life is. Your mother is Russian. Your mother's from Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg. But your father is Ukrainian, and you spent your childhood up until the time you went to Moscow for your ballet training in Kyiv. And then you had your first professional work as a dancer back in Kyiv in the Ukrainian National Ballet. So one does realize how Ukrainian you actually are. When you chose this music and chose to do this piece as your first work at a ballet theater, how much were you thinking about your Ukrainian heritage? What was happening? What was going on that made you
I
choose?
think, yeah, it was, by the way, Prokofiev was also born in Ukraine,
Yes.
Donetsk region, but I didn't think about that. Now, Prokofiev is Prokofiev, and I just knew that there is a score. I've heard it, I had the recording, and I wanted to do it. I thought the story is workable. There is something there. I didn't know the company at all. I've seen ABT perform in Paris once in the early 90s, I think.
Yes.
And that was it. So it was new. All the dancers were new to me. I knew the names of Paloma, Marcelo, I never heard of. I saw him in the studio. I was amazed by the quality of his dancing. And yeah, it was great for me to have 4 principals, 2 ladies and 2 men. And the process was challenging because the music is challenging. It's not a Prokofiev that is very familiar to everyone, because when he moved back to Soviet Union, I think he worked hard to simplify his language. He was less edgy, less avant-garde, more melodic, and he wanted to be accepted by the standards of social realism that was dictated by the authorities. So he combined his genius with the desire to be understood and to be liked. So Prokofiev of Romeo and Juliet and Cinderella is much more easy to accept. And I think Dnipro is in the middle, his transition from prodigal son and earlier avant-garde language of his to the later period. So the music is beautiful, deep, but also very, very challenging. I don't know if Christine, you agree with me. You probably feel the music so in your body now that.
Yes, at first it was quite difficult because it was like memorizing a phone, like all the phrases would be very different count wise. It's not just even. So it would be hard to kind of adapt to it. But now, since I've done it so many times, it's a pleasure because you can just play with the music more. There's so much more you can add with all of that, I think.
Christine, do you recall, or can you cast your mind back to that time? I know you were a very young person in the company, but when Alexei first arrived, we were in many ways as unfamiliar with him as he was with us. What were your what were your and the other dancers' impressions at that time as you started to work with him on this very first work? How did it seem? How did he seem?
I think we were all very, very excited to work with him. There was a lot of anticipation, kind of what was he going to be like? What was the process going to be like? But I truly love working with Alexei in the studio. There's this inspiration that he brings with him. It's like you want to do your best. Every time you rehearse with him, you want to do your best and just work really hard. He's the only person that can pull things out of me that nobody else can, because he asks you to go to your limits and do all these things that you thought you could never do. And he forces you to go further and further and further beyond your limits. And the result it's pretty incredible. I think for myself, just learning all the things I can do with my body is really wonderful.
Well, since that time, you have progressed through the ballet, and now you perform one of the leading roles in the ballet, which you have done previously, and you will be repeating that again this season.
Yes.
I remember watching that process. It was the first ballet that I saw him, that I actually watched the rehearsals and the creation process, and seeing how, I think that was the first inkling I had, as the dancers had, of how he worked, of this incredibly detailed fine tuning, and especially the character work, just the detail of the storytelling and of each character's expression and the nuances of who they were. So that was a really interesting part. It sort of ignited my imagination, and later when I talked to Kevin, he said that when Alexei mentioned this ballet, it made him think of an Anthony Tudor ballet. So in fact, that seemed interestingly very much in tune, despite the subject matter, with the actual history of the company.
So Alexei, you were really inspired by the music, but you weren't really thinking so much about exploring Ukrainian heritage or Ukrainian history?
Not at the time, but I was thinking of Tudor, actually. Of course, I prepared to, when I was about to move to New York and to take residency at ABT, I did my research, and the subject seemed fitting in that lane. Just a bit of an anecdote of the original choreographer, Serge Lifar. The hero's name bears his name, Sergei. Olga Lifar, the original choreographer, had in mind Olga Spasivtseva, and Natalia is also there is a prototype for her character, Natalie Paley, the Russian emigre in Paris. Both ladies, Lifar said, were in love with him. So it reflects his personal story. And since the music was composed for that story, I didn't think of changing anything. My attention to my Ukrainian part came much later.
But I think it's interesting that you did decide to make a ballet on a Ukrainian theme, even if you weren't thinking of it in your conscious brain. I mean, it was there.
I mean, I grew up there, and Kyiv and Dnipro and Ukraine is home country. So of course, it's very much part of me. Yeah.
And today, would you think of it or see the story of this ballet somewhat differently, or? I'm
curious. Unfortunately, I'm missing this run. The last run, pre-pandemic, I remember liking the ballet. It's not always the case when you look at your own works, but I did like it. And I think after so many years together with ABT, within ABT, working so closely with the dancers, somehow they feel much more comfortable than at the very beginning. And it just grows, you know. The ballets have interesting life. They're born, they're cooked, then they're born, and then it's very important that they're performed, because dancers find solutions. Things that didn't quite work, they work with, you know, new casts may solve the problem and make, or change it and make it different, make it look different, make it mean different. So when the ballet is performed over seasons, it is transformed and it lives a life of its own. And sometimes it gives you a surprise. You are very, very surprised by what the possibilities that were there you didn't think of.
One thing I noticed in a rehearsal I watched the other day, I was very surprised by it, is that the story of a Ukrainian soldier returning home after the First World War and finding that he has changed and his feelings for his fiancée have changed. And we've heard all these stories now of families in Ukraine who have been divided, men who've stayed in Ukraine, families who've gone to, wives and children who've gone to Europe. And the difficulty of reconnecting, and the fact that people find new, people need comfort, people need intimacy, and finding new families. Maybe they also need hope. So when I was watching that rehearsal, it suddenly hit me that in a way it's a very similar story. And it's interesting how the history around a ballet affects how you perceive the ballet itself. It can remain the same for years, and then something happens and you see it again and you see it completely differently. And I wonder if that will also happen with the Shostakovich Piano Concerto.
I just want to quickly ask Christine how she feels about doing the ballet now as a Ukrainian, and given the context of today. Has your feeling for and perception of the story and everything about it changed?
Right. Well, I mean, even when we did it 10 years ago, and today, the meaning behind the ballet is pretty much the same. It worked then and it works now. To me, the underlying theme is about love, love for human beings, this enormous love that, you know, when you truly love someone, would you be willing to give up everything for them? But in today's day, since the war happened and everything, there's a lot more meaning behind performing on the Dnieper and performing piano concerto. There's kind of a lot more emotion. There's a reason to be performing it. So I feel like it is a lot more meaningful, and you can really see this incredible intention behind it from all the dancers. It's just more powerful, I think, now.
For me, the beginning of the ballet is much more clear because the weight that the hero has on his shoulders, returning from the war, having the experience of fighting, killing, seeing death, seeing blood, seeing all this suffering. I was trying to explain that to the dancers. I had few rehearsals before I left to Vienna, and he is very, very different from the village, from everyone else around him, because he has this experience of war, something that I didn't really pay much attention. I didn't understand that back then, but now it's yeah, it's very clear. You see the stories every day in the news.
I know Christine's time is limited because she's about to do a run through of the ballet.
This is great. This is good for me.
Of course, the other work that you mentioned that we're doing is and that I mentioned is the Shostakovich Piano Concerto #1. So just to go to that, Alexei, that was part of the Shostakovich trilogy. It seemed at that time, I was in all of those rehearsals. I remember it very vividly, and I remember some of the things you were talking about at that time. It seemed a really deep kind of exploration of the Soviet Union and Soviet life. It was an incredible evening. We've never done the whole evening again, but we've done some of the individual pieces again. I'm just wondering now, how does it feel to think about that work about the Soviet Union and what you were thinking at the time that you produced the Shostakovich evening, and now how do you feel differently about it? There are a lot of, particularly in the Piano Concerto No. 1, the backdrop has a lot of symbols in it that are directly linked to the Soviet Union. So I'm just curious how you feel about it now.
And again, I'm so sad I'm missing the run, because yeah, I can think of it, but the experience of seeing the ballet might give you completely different ideas. And as I said, the ballet's change. Christina mentioned that it's gonna have, even without intention, it's gonna have different meaning, different weight today. I was in love with Shostakovich music from very early age, because his music is extraordinary. It's in its diversity. It's everything. It's tragic, theatrical, it's intimate, it's sarcastic, it's bombastic, you know, whatever. He was pulled and pushed. He was praised, and then he was destroyed by the authorities. He was a survivor, and he felt that he needs to bring the message of humanity, even though he needed to hide it underneath the forced optimism or forced simplicity of his melodies, you know, and rhythms. So it's very layered, very complex music that fascinated me. Yes, it's not like I was trying to illustrate somehow Soviet history or my own experience during this time. I mean, I was 20 when Soviet Union collapsed, and suddenly you don't need to go to this, you know, meetings in the morning where you hear the news from communist perspective, and suddenly people started to speak like people in the TV and radio, and, you know, this quasi language that meant nothing, it all collapsed, and something alive appeared. That was extraordinary time in the 1990s. Very, very poor economically. It's like we couldn't buy bread or butter. We would stay for 3-4 hours to just buy sugar. And but we were touring in Europe, and we would buy cheese and sausages, you know, for bring it from Europe. It doesn't matter. I mean,
yeah, I was just one of the most shocking statements to me in the book was when you said that you had bought a video camera when you were touring, and your father asked you if you'd be willing to sell your video camera to buy an apartment for your sister who was just getting married.
Yes, crazy time, absolutely crazy time.
You could pay for an apartment with the proceeds of the sale of a video camera. Seemed crazy.
Yeah. So I am a little worried about the Soviet symbolica. That is part of the design, but maybe it's okay. I don't know.
Having just watched the rehearsal today, I think the power and the energy of your choreography is so strong that is what everyone will.
I'm sure they are dancing beautifully. I have no doubt, and I feel the connection. My soul is with the dancers of ABT doing it. But I just wanted to I suddenly remembered that I planned another piece for the trilogy. I started to choreograph Symphony No. 1, and I did maybe half hour, no less, of course, half of the ballet, and just felt that there is not enough contrast between 3 works. And I took 2 or 3 days off, and then I decided to go with piano concerto, and then very quickly, like in a week or something, it was done because I knew this music very well.
I remember that moment. It was a very dramatic moment.
Oh yeah.
Everyone
Right.
kind of, it was like a seismic earthquake. Alexei's changing the music, he's changing the music, and then he disappeared for a couple of days. But then, of course, as you said, you came back and it was all done in an instant. It's a very strong work. It has tremendous energy, and I'm sure that's what the impression the audience will have the most from the work is your choreography. Not maybe they'll notice the symbols in the backdrop, maybe not, but
But I mean, I think in a way, if they do notice, it's again, it's like on the Dnipro. That's what the piece is about. It's a meditation on Soviet themes, and it's. I remember there was a review by Jonah Coachella. She said that it was a combination of happy aggression with fear and sorrow. And I think the ballet contains this kind of image of Soviet triumphalism. I mean, every part of the trilogy had different themes, but the last one, which was this one, it was sort of about this Soviet triumphalism. But there were all these hints of darkness that I think will stand out even more now. I mean, there are moments when dancers come on carrying female dancers on their shoulders, and it's like an advancing armada. Actually, there's this kind of sense of ominous aggression again, and bodies being separated from each other and clinging to each other for comfort. So it's kind of this dual nature of the Soviet experiment, which I think is a theme through the whole trilogy. So maybe that will actually be really interesting to see in the context of what's happening now.
I also think there is another aspect to it, because there is an imprint of the original interpreters in both ballets, actually in every ballet. And every next interpreter has a choice to either go in that direction or change it, but they can't ignore what was done by the original dancers, because a lot of steps came also, like you see the strengths of the dancer and you want to use it. Yeah, we had Osipov and Vasilyev and Vishneva, so it was
very strong. Yeah,
strong.
I was thinking of them today as I was watching the run through. They're seared in my memory of that work.
Like in the Dnipro, it was David is a crazy fiance, and Paloma and Veronica and Marcelo, of course. Yeah.
And the crazy fiance, I remember David had never done anything like that before, and it revealed this very dramatic, emotional dancer that just came out from inside of him. And it'll be interesting to see whoever the young dancer who takes that role, what it's going to bring out of him. It's an exciting opportunity to stretch dancers.
The other thing I would just say is that this is the first time we are performing these works, I believe, in the Koch Theater, which is a smaller venue than On the Dnipro has only been performed in the Metropolitan Opera House. And I think the slightly more intimate or closer scale of the Koch Theater will also make the work come across very differently, both for the performers and the audience, and even in piano concerto as well. It's one's much closer to the work there, and it reads in a different way. Yeah, I wish you were here, Alexei.
Yeah. Me too.
Listen, I want to be mindful of Christine's time, so I wanted to skip ahead to our next topic, which is subsequent to the war. Alexei, you've been very involved in a company that has formed of refugee dancers from Ukraine, the United Ukrainian Ballet. And Christine, you've performed with this company now several times in London, in America, in the West Coast, in Washington. And I wonder if we could just speak for a moment about his company, and the work you've done with them. Alexei, you staged your production of Giselle, which you had originally done at the Bolshoi with them, and Christine, who's danced Giselle for many years here at ABT, took on the role there. So just what has it been like to work in a group of completely Ukrainian artists and supporting them?
It was great, and it was challenging also. So this group, it's not a company. It's the idea came to Dutch principal dancer, retired Igor de Jong. She's a wonderful dancer. She had 2 Ukrainian partners. When the war started, the men were desperate, didn't know what to do. And she said, okay, let's get as many Ukrainian dancers as possible, and we will do something. So at first, just women arrived because men didn't have permission to leave. Then Ministry of Culture gave them that permission, and it was enough dancers to stage a piece. And Igor asked me to participate in the programming. And then Coliseum in London contacted, saying that they have a week, someone canceled, and they wanted to do something with Ukrainian dancers. And we decided to stage Giselle because the dancers are familiar with it. Most of the Ukrainian companies have classical rap. And it's a beautiful story, and it's not a Russian classic, so it felt very appropriate. Of course, it's slightly different production than at the Bolshoi because we had fewer dancers, and I also changed little things here and there. But it's based on the historical documents. Giselle is very well documented. There are many scores with detailed action, put down on the notes, and every bar what is happening. And I find it's so rich, it's a really genius ballet. Everything makes sense, and restoring some forgotten mise-en-scène and dances also felt very good. And Christine danced miraculously. She was so beautiful. We had time rehearsing in New York, then she came to The Hague. She had new partners, she had different partners within a week. But she is so professional of the highest level, and she adapts always, no drama, nothing. She's always there, giving her full, to the role.
Christine, you've been in America since you were really a little girl. So what was it like to be surrounded by Ukrainian artists?
Well, it felt just right. For me, I was born in Ukraine. I'm a daughter of Ukraine. My parents were born in Ukraine. My grandparents were born in Ukraine. My great-grandparents were born in Ukraine. So it flows through my veins. And at the time, I was trying to think of all the things I could do to help in any way that I can. And when this project kind of came together, it was perfect because I could actually be there together with all of my fellow Ukrainians and dance together with them and represent them, and also get to dance Alexei Ratmansky's version of Giselle. So it was all just fantastic. I was so happy to be able to do that.
Wonderful. Well, Christine, I think you've got about 10 minutes before your next run through. So I really appreciate you coming on and speaking and sharing your experiences dancing Alexei's ballets today.
Of course.
And everyone can look forward to your performances next week and the week after in those works and several others in our upcoming season.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexei. All right.
Thank you.
So just to continue with the Ukraine theme, I believe now you are scheduled to return to Kyiv and create a work there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm planning to go there in February, March and stage the piece that I did already for Pacific Northwest ballet. It's called Wartime Elegy. I use the music of the major Ukrainian composer, Valentin Silvestrev. He's alive, he's in his 80s now. And also some recording of village Ukrainian music from 1930s, wonderful rhythms. So it has two contrasting parts. And also I used works of, for the design, I used works of Ukrainian artists. One is a classical primitive painter. She taught herself to paint, Maria Primachenko. She is a major Ukrainian artist of 20th century. And another one is contemporary artist, Matvey Weisberg. So their works are projected by Wendell Harrington, who did projections for us. So this piece, I hope, the company in Kiev, as well as Lviv, Odessa, and some other companies, they keep performing during the war. So what the dancers tell me that if there is a alert, a siren, air siren, the performance stops and the audience and the dancers go to the shelter, and then they either continue if it stops or it just they cancel.
And this is the first time you will actually work with the Ukrainian company as a choreographer. Is that...
Since, yeah, I did my first evening of choreography in Kyiv in 1994. So it's going to be my return. I hope it works.
And of course, your family is there, your parents and your sister. I don't know if you've seen them or not since the war began. Would that be the
I have seen them in Europe, but not back at home. Yeah, they were able to travel and meet me in The Hague, actually.
Wonderful. Marina, I wonder if you could just tell us a bit about, you went to Ukraine, but obviously before the war started. Give us a little bit of your impressions of Kyiv and seeing the early childhood parts of Alexei's life.
Yeah, first I wanted to mention that Maria Primachenko, I think she has an exhibit going on in New York currently.
That's right, yeah.
I encourage, I saw her paintings at the Folk Art Museum in Kyiv, which I loved when I went to visit, and I'm looking forward to seeing this exhibit as well. So I think it's at the Ukrainian Cultural Center, I think it's called. So Kyiv, I loved Kyiv. It's a really fascinating city. I went at the best time of year. It was June. The trees were in bloom. It's a very friendly city. It has wonderful Art Nouveau buildings. It's a little bit crumbling a tiny bit, which I like because it reminded me of my family's background in Argentina. It reminded me of Buenos Aires a lot, a very beautiful city that has seen hard times. So it's not perfect and plastic, it's very real. I didn't realize before I went how hilly it is. And that's part of its charm. You're always going up and down these hills. And in fact, Alexei's family lives on one of them with the most marvelous view of the city. I found where they live now it's in this older part of the city, and we spent afternoons. I had a translator. I don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, and I found it extraordinary how you can actually speak to people through a translator and still feel like you're speaking directly to them, and they can understand what you're saying and you can understand what they're saying. That was a very powerful feeling. And I remember just sitting in their dining room and just talking, and I remember they gave me cherries. It was cherry season, and just sitting there and talking, and as the light waned over this very beautiful city, this kind of golden light. I also visited the Chernobyl Museum there. There's a very good museum about Chernobyl, and and then talking to Alexei's parents about it and realizing what an impact that event had on everybody's lives. And right outside their building, there's actually a monument to the firemen who died in Chernobyl. And so there were these little connections that you don't really feel them unless you go to a city and you suddenly realize the importance of certain events. And talking to Alexei's mother, and she remembered the terror that they felt. She told me the story about picking up some hitchhikers on the road, and it was raining. And of course, the rain, people were afraid that rain had radioactivity in it, and thinking, have we just invited death into our cars, how she put it, because these two people were covered in this possibly radioactive rain. And then I thought of Firebird and how the Alexei's version of Firebird has these putrid trees with, you know, terrible smoke coming out, and how everything sort of glows. And then I asked the designer of the ballet, Simon Pastuk, whether it had anything to do with Chernobyl. And he said, oh yes, of course, we talked about the red trees. So there were these little connections that just never would have thought of it if I hadn't gone to Kyiv. So it was a really magical trip. And in fact, I really fell in love with the city, and I can't wait to go back actually someday.
Wonderful. Well, we have just a few minutes left. Alexei, when we signed on, you said, what will we talk about for an hour? And I feel like I could talk to you for 5 or 6 more hours. There's so many aspects of your work that we didn't even touch on, like your relationship to music. And I would love to have explored so many more things with you. But there are 2 paragraphs in the book that really stood out to me about the choreographic process. And I just wanted to read these 2 paragraphs, and then we can just say a couple of words about them. So this is a passage pretty early in the book where Marina, you're describing his process creating a work. I believe it was for Nina Ananiashvili. It was her Turandot's Dream. That was for Nina, correct?
No, it was maybe
Dream
Dreams
of
of Japan. Yeah, Dreams of Japan.
Oh, this one's about Turandot's Dream.
Oh, okay.
What you're talking
That's
about.
the
And
Danish.
Danish. Sorry. My mistake. So this was you describing that process. You said there is no easy linear way to analyze the ballet because the impulses behind it are multiple and varied, layered one upon the other. Some the audience is more or less aware of. Others are invisible to them. But all these elements are part of the final product combined. They create a logic of their own. This was the important part. One time I asked Ratmansky to describe how he develops this layering of implied narrative, character, and musical illustration. It is an intuitive process, he explained. When I imagine the choreography, it is as if it existed already. If I force it, I will not be able to know it. So I have to be careful with it. I have to try to learn about it by walking around it and looking at it, asking questions, waiting for answers. If I don't get the right answer today, I wait to find another angle from which to see it. His ballets are a reflection of the unconscious connections that take shape in the imagination, a process obscure even to himself. I thought that was one of the most descriptive and actually profound statements about the creative process I think I've read about choreography. To acknowledge that even you yourself, Alexei, don't completely understand where the work comes from.
Maybe he disagrees.
No, I think it might be, at least in my imagination, a bit simpler because I started to do ballet when I was 10 and now I'm 55. So all these years, my idea about the steps and coordination were formed by my experience as a dancer, as a spectator, and then as a choreographer and working with dancers and so on. Then this system of coordination and movements in my head combines with the music that I'm listening to. And then, yeah, I go with an initial idea, then I take something from the dancers and I try out a phrase or two, and then there is a certain logic that I need to pin down, and then it works. And sometimes I'm not able to do that, and then I force it, and then it doesn't work that well. So I guess I'm saying the same thing, but just slightly different.
But then there are all these little things that come from your life sometimes that you don't even talk about, but you have to, the viewer has to kind of find them, or if you ask about them, then, oh yeah, that's true. It's like whipped cream.
I guess it's part of me.
Yeah.
It's part of, yeah.
Like whipped cream, there are all these little secrets that if you happen to know more about Alexei's life, they're in there. They're in the ballet.
It's truly amazing to have all of it combined in one book, and you can see, written down. It's quite an extraordinary moment for me. So yeah.
Well, I think the one thing we can say absolutely about the book is that it demonstrates that you have literally poured your entire life into your work. Like, your life is your work, and your work is your life. And that's amazing. And Marina, you've taken us on the journey through Alexei's life to reveal a relationship in that process. So
thank you. I mean, that was my discovery too, I think. That was my takeaway.
Well, sadly, we have to draw our conversation to a close. I really, truly do wish we had many more hours to go on and on, because Alexei, your life is so rich and so deep. It deserves many more hours of discussion. But this has been really wonderful, and I'm so I'm sorry too that you're not going to be able to see the revival of your works in the coming weeks, but I know that the dancers in American Ballet Theater today carry the imprint of you very much in their bodies, because they've all worked with you for so long, and they have literally, a dancer like Christine has been formed and shaped in her entire career by your work. So it's there alive on the stage, and I can't.
I also have a wonderful, extraordinary rehearsal directors there, like Nancy and Carlos and yourself and Susan and Irina. So that's been very helpful.
Well, thank you both so much, and Alexei, good luck in Vienna and onwards from there, and we'll keep you posted about everything here.
Okay.
Thank you both so much.
Thanks so much, Marina.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Clinton. Thank you, everyone.